Hey guys, today in the toy box we're taking a look at Hasbro's new Ghostbusters figures. This is the main four cast members. Of course we have Stantz, we have Venkman, Spengler, and Zeddemore. These are the 2020 versions from the Plasma Series Hasbro put out. So this is a new license for them, launched this year with these as well as the classic Kenner style Ghostbusters. So there were also, of course, Dana. There is only Zool, and also Gozer, the Gozerian, which is a cool character. And then, of course, they had some life-size props that are also in Walmart's of the PKE meter and the trap. So it's kind of a good thing for Ghostbusters fans because there's a lot of stuff out there. But we're going to be taking a look at these figures and also comparing them to Mattel's or Matty Collector's Ghostbusters series from a few years back. So let's get into the review. So the first figure we're going to take a look at is the Peter Venkman Plasma Series figure. This is a 6-inch scale figure. High on details. Of course, they use the photoreal paint apps for the face. The box is pretty cool because it's like the outer edge of the jumpsuit, so you see some of the parachute ripcord. Of course, the zippers. Front of the box is fairly cool. Of course, it's got all the warnings and stuff like that on it. Side is a cool image of all of the main characters. Minimalist art style. And the back shows you not only a bio on the character, but also other characters in the series, and of course the Build-A-Ghost, which is Vin's Clortho. This one comes with the leg marked 1 because it's Peter Venkman, and then it has some other information on the box and warnings and distributor stuff. Side is basic on this one. It just has a little partial window into the figure, and of course, easy peasy, the bottom has the UPC code and some information, and then the top has basically another window into the box. So that's what we're looking at as far as the figure packaging, and let's open it up and take a look and see. So here is the figure out of the box. Took some doing. It is very snug in the plastic container, but you can see there's also a nice little design in the back of the box, schematics and stuff like that, and of course, it's always nice to have a good box that if you are an in-box collector, you can do that as well. But I was interested when I was taking the figure out that it's much more posable than many of the other figures. Aside from just having the basic 5 points of articulation, it's also double jointed in the elbows, the knees. It's got swivels and pivots in the hips, which is kind of cool. Mid-thigh articulation, as well as in the shoe. It turns side to side as well as up and down. Hands and wrists are also articulated. There's no wrist articulation beyond that, but there is a mid-bicep swivel, which is kind of cool. And then a ball socket for the head, so he can look down pretty well. The only thing that limits his movement, range of motion in the back is that he has the hair in the back, but overall, pretty nice on the articulation front. The paint ops are pretty incredible, but I mean, we kind of expect that now with the photorealistic figures, the way that they're painting them now, even down to the Venkman patch on the front of the figure. It's much better in person than I got from the photos that I've seen online and the press photos and prototypes and stuff like that. Everything else is molded in color. It's not a separate app there. Has great shoulder and chest articulation as well. I didn't want to leave that off, and there's detail all the way around as far as the belt goes. So this could offer a lot of articulation. And as far as the backpack, I was noticing in the package that all of them are different as far as how the red dots line up from the accelerator here. So paint is okay. I mean, they don't have all the rainbow in the ribbon wires. They're not individually painted, but we'll compare this against the Mattel version as well, so you can see that. And then, of course, the backpack frame is fairly accurate to the movie version. It did come with a few other accessories as well. One being the trap. cheaped out a little bit on this actually, because it's supposed to have the foot pedal and the cable for the foot pedal operation, but it's an easy custom if you want to do that. But still, it's fairly accurate for the design. And then of course you get the leg of Vince Clortho, which if you're not going to get the Dana Barrett or the Zool figure, you're pretty much out of luck to get the rest of the dog. So I have a feeling some people may just want to get the dog and pass on the other ones. But back to the figure, we can see the details of that, and there's a lot of articulation to this. Very well made. It's not a cheap figure. The joints are nice and stiff, so it'll hold a pose pretty well as a part of that as well. If you want to do certain poses, a little stiff on the knee, but you just have to be cautious. You don't want to break these. Very wide knee, you can kind of see there as far as the poseability, because it is double jointed and it's such a substantial size because of the jumpsuit. It does kind of flay open quite a lot, but it's an aesthetic thing versus functionality, because if you want to put them into those action poses, you would need that double joint, but it does make it a little bit unnatural on the positioning. So we'll get his backpack on and see how that goes, and we'll be right back with a little bit on that. Okay, so as far as the backpack goes, I wanted to show you that there is, this backpack part here. I've heard stories online about how it has been a little bit difficult to get it on as far as fit, so I wanted to show you that. There is a side snap here, but there is no separation anywhere else. And as a warning, I've seen a few of my friends that have done reviews that they've had parts of the backpack snap. So I would definitely be careful with that, because as you see, it's a bulky figure and you got to get this in there without damaging the actual figure itself. And the only place that it opens is on this lower side here. So in putting it on, we're going to have to finagle it in there and see how we can get it in there without actually breaking components, because that would just be an injustice. So I don't seem to be having a problem with this, but it seems to be going on quite easily. And since all the bodies are virtually the same, it should be fairly similar as far as the assembly on all the others. That wasn't too bad. Not as bad as the horror stories I've heard. There is a peg in his back that you want to make sure is seated in pretty well. So just kind of give it a little push. And that should be good. Okay, again, there's no real encumbrance of the backpack. It fits on pretty well. And then of course, there should be, and there's a little area on the side here. That's a little peg and slot here. So that's going to go right on there, or this way actually. And that's a snap-on. So no real problem there. I mean, it went on very well. There's pretty good balance to the figure as far as it's standing. It's always hard when you have a big backpack like that, because even with something like this, you might have to lean him forward if you're not careful. But that's a good thing that they have a good swivel in the feet. So we can rock those feet forward just a little bit and see if that helps the stance. No pun intended. Yeah, it seems to work. So, good clean figure. Good poseability. We're going to play with that a little bit as well. And then we'll do a side-by-side comparison with the Matty Collector or Mattel version of the Venkman. Okay, thoroughly impressed with the poseability and the balance on the figure. As you can see, it maintains pretty good balance unassisted. No base is needed here. The articulation in the boots allow for some pretty good poses. And the hands, I don't know if they are, reused or salvaged off of a Star Wars figure, but they're in a kind of a trigger pose, but it works well with, the neutrino wand. But you can get some pretty nice action poses out of it. And again, with the poseability of the of the head, you get some nice posability as well. There's not a lot of posability in the actual trunk of the figure and the torso, but it does have some wiggle room, but because of all the accessories and stuff on his belt, it doesn't really, add up there. But very nice overall as far as the pose and the look. The aesthetic of the toy is good while still being toy-like. It has a really good quality for the realism to it as well, especially with that the paint job on the face. And taking a look at the good old one from Matty Collector, we can see side by side some of the differences. This is Pete Venkman from the Matty Collector line. Very similar in size, as you can see. Height, if we stand the new Hasbro one up, we can compare. Let's take a look at what we're looking side by side. Okay, so they're about the same size. I mean, immediately what you see is there are details in one, and those are missing in the other, and then the other has good details that the other one doesn't have. So they're kind of like, the head sculpts are pretty good. I'm sort of leaning towards the Hasbro one, just because it has a little more of a Bill Murray likeness. This one is, the Matty Collector is a little bit more toyetic. They made it look kind of like Pete Venkman, but certainly that one is much more accurate to the actor, I believe. The Hasbro one is a little bit, has the edge on it. As far as the other detail, there are details on the Matty that this doesn't have, like certain details on the backpack supports and that sort of thing. The belts, I think, are a little more superior on the Mattel, as well as he has the correct color gray elbow pads, whereas the Hasbro has, the black. I'll have to go back and check and see if that was on there, but both of these have the Pete Venkman, because he could not bother to tuck in the bottom of his jumpsuit, so he just has it over his boots. And he's the only one in the figure set from the new Hasbro series that has the cuff of the pants over the boot. But you can see there's a little more color on the Matty Collector, but it is a little out of scale. It's a little narrow compared to the Hasbro one. I do like the touch of the clear hose on the Matty Collector versus the painted yellow one on the Hasbro. And the posability was always a little funky on the Matty Collectors. Even though they are very similar in joints and posability, I could never really get it to pose right and still look, aesthetically pleasing and have it, stand in position without a base or a stand. But overall, they're close. They're a product of the time, because this Matty Collector one, if I remember correctly, that's almost 8 years old now, I believe. So that's been out for a while, and we kind of judge toys by a little different standard now, obviously. But overall, I gotta give extra points to Hasbro on this, just because it looks like they spent a little more time on the head sculpt. The outfit is a little bit more accurate in color and style, the zippers and everything like that. So overall, I'd have to give them a very, good rank for what they attempted on the Venkman, at least. And we'll take a look at the other ones as well. I'm not going to bore you with opening each one up and going through the posability, but we're going to take a look at the accessories of each and see how they compare with each other. But that's what we're looking at with old Pete Venkman. Okay, so there we have the Fab Four of the Ghostbusters, 1984's greatest movie in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that has a lot to say for the characters. We'll do a one by one so you can kind of get a better look on it. But one thing that I love about the Ray Stantz is that the goggles actually fit. If you can see that wonderful. The background might be a little bit too busy, but I want to try to show you the details of the Ray Stantz here. Let me see if I can find a sweet spot. But he's got the goggles. They each have one accessory, which is kind of lame. If I got to pick anything to nitpick on the figures, it's that they each come with one accessory, rather than having all the accessories. Ray comes with his famous goggles, and he has a different belt than the other guys in that you can hang the goggles on the belt if you want. Kind of precarious setup, but he's got that. The I don't think he was sculpted to be a little heavier than the others, but his backpack doesn't want to stay on very well, but maybe he was. I'll have to look at that on the next figure, but that's him. He does have the slightly different belt down here, but wow, I mean that's a pretty good likeness, and the posability is really, really awesome. Again, taking a look at Matty Collector, we want to go back to that as well. The Matty Collector, I think, like I said, that was done about 8 years ago. He's got about 8 years worth of dust on him. I gotta get better about dusting. But you can see these two side by side. This one, there's a drastic difference in the quality of the Matty Collector, because for some reason his head is just a little bit too pinched. I don't know why that happened. Plus, it's really obvious that his body is the same as the others in that he is thin. And of course, Dan Aykroyd, he wasn't a skinny mini. You know, he was a healthy looking gentleman, so there is a little difference there. Hair is a little bit dark too, but overall the aesthetic of the Matty Collector figure was really good for the day. But compared next to the new Plasma Series, wow, I didn't even, when I first saw him in the store, the packaging just doesn't even give it the showcase that it deserves, because it's pretty spot on. And I love the Matty Collector figures. That's the bummer, because it's like real estate is prime, so I can't put them both out, but I'm going to be hard pressed whether I sell it or just put it away and keep it for nostalgia. But yeah, very happy with that. And one thing, if I'm nitpicking, the Neutrino wand, this one has the correct and screen accurate little loop of wire. This one doesn't. So, you know, the obsessive and compulsive me will probably have to you know, customize that. But other than that, they're very, very close. But wow, huge difference on Ray Stantz. And then we move into the Reluctant Hero. Truth be told, Winston Zeddemore in our household is probably the favorite. I can get love in Venkman and everything, but I absolutely adore Ernie Hudson as Zeddemore. He was the everyman, you know, because when we would all be going for a job interview in the Ghostbusters firehouse, I'm sure we would have the same thoughts as our man Ernie, Winston Zeddemore, where he was just like, if there's a steady paycheck, I will believe anything you want. So there he is next to his Matty Collector counterpart. Again, both have great head sculpts. The Matty Collector one does look a little bit sweaty. He's got some shine to him, and there's a flat mat for the Hasbro one. Again, interesting note, this guy, Zeddemore, is the only one that comes with the stream for the Neutrino wand. So I don't know why they decided to do that, but I'm really hoping that eventually, maybe on Hasbro Pulse, if anyone out there is listening from Hasbro Pulse, please have an accessory pack that you can buy through the website that has all these nice little accessories for all of the Ghostbusters, because it would really be cool to have them posed with the streams. Just we won't cross them, but I just like it. It looks cool, and for the first time they got it right. It's very similar if you're a fan of the old Star Wars Black Series figures. Anytime they had Force Lightning or anything like that, they did it very similarly. But the colors are so cool, and they do look like the you know, the streams. I like it. None of them come with giant Twinkies, however, which I was a little disappointed in. And then, of course, the standout, likeness and everything, has got to be this guy, the late, great Egon Spengler. I think there was great mourning in our house when he passed. actual tears were shed. Because he was such an iconic actor, not only in Ghostbusters, but in Stripes and so many other movies. Plus, you know, he was a great director, writer. We wouldn't have had Stripes without his input. Of course, he was such a big part of the writing of Ghostbusters, so we miss our Harold Ramis, but this figure definitely does him justice. I'm very impressed. His single and only accessory is the PKE meter. But if we're again jumping back to the Matty Collector, which again, I don't want to sound like I'm trashing the figures, because I have a great fondness and the memories alone from the Matty Collector figures, or the Mattel. They were released in regular stores. They were great for the time, but it's like you see them side by side with the Plasma Series, and there is a pretty huge difference. Egon from the Matty Collector or Mattel series, the glasses were a little clunky, but they were removable. I'm not sure why they did that. But on the Hasbro Plasma Series, they are molded on the face and painted, but they can do such a much more delicate job on the glasses and the painting that they actually look like there's lenses in there. There isn't. It's just a paint op. But very, very well done. And the details throughout both figures, they're similar to the Venkman, like I showed you the back of the backpack. Again, I think the Hasbro Pulse is just a slightly more accurate as far as scale and positioning. This one's a little bit too narrow, that one's dead on. But again, I'm kind of obsessive compulsive when it comes to that, and I love when the figures actually, you know, emulate the screen counterparts. And this one, it's just a little bit narrow. But again, I'm nitpicking. I mean, this is just a fantastic figure sculpt, both cases, if you have both. And of course, his belt has the hole for the PKE meter. So again, it's just, they're awesome figures. I just don't want to trash on either one of them, but I think that Hasbro definitely, you know, pulled one out of their hats for this. It's actually very, very good. And you know, probably the reason that everything looks so much more accurate as well is that they had access to the actual plans and photos and prototypes of the, you know, the accessories as well, because they are doing a Black Series or a Plasma Series, the neutrino wand. It doesn't come with the backpack, but it's an electronic neutrino wand. But I believe that that is for the new Ghostbusters movie that's coming out, because they did show that at Toy Fair this year, where it was, you know, spot on to that. So even down to the age and everything. So there are our boys, our four greatest New Yorkers. No offense to others in New York, but come on, they're the Ghostbusters. They've saved the world how many times? I'm looking forward to see what comes out from the new movie, if they are going to do any figures, but these guys are great. If I do happen to go back and try to get Dana and Zool, we'll let you know and do a separate thing, but you know, I'm good with just having the four main characters as well. And then all of them come with these legs, so pretty cool. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining in. I hope that this was an educational little review for you, and I would definitely say, if you can find them on the peg in the wild, they retail for about $19 each. They're worth it. You know, I would say snag them if you can, but from what I'm seeing in the wild, it's very hard to find these guys. But there you go. And if you have any other comments or anything like that, be sure to leave them in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are so inclined, and watch for future shows, because we do a little bit of everything here. We do the action figure reviews, we do tutorials for makeup and special effects, but I'm a big nerd, my wife is a big nerd, my family is a herd of nerds, so we do all sorts of stuff like this as well. Any kind of odd art, special effects, makeup, prop building. We're going to have a lot more coming, hopefully, in the coming months. The whole COVID thing, I hope everyone is safe, but it has been a killer for everyone as far as the economy, attitudes, and everything. Plus, we've had, you know, horrible riots and you know, social injustice that we've been fighting as well. So hopefully things will regulate, normalize, and we can get back to having a fun and homogenous life with everyone. But anyway, be safe out there, peace, and we'll see you next time. We'll be right back.